But yeah, we are kicking off. Man, we are flying through y'all with these books. Like we
Yes.
are really kicking it and having some really good conversations with these books. And so I want to start us off with our July book. It didn't start with you. I don't know if you can see it with my crazy background, but so those that are watching this recording later, feel free. Our idea for these books every month is to have community conversations and training and information that will blow your mind. They say if you want to hide something, put it in a book. And nope, we're not hiding anymore. We're bringing this to light. And so I want to introduce my lovely peeps at the Encompassing Center. We have a newbie on the line, Miss Lauren. Yay.
Hi, everyone.
And we have Diamond, our usual. She's here every month so faithfully. And Miss Star, she's coming in halfway through, but she's really been enjoying the knowledge and learning, and that shares with everyone that you don't have to be a therapist to learn this stuff, because we all need to know this stuff. And so I want to kick off our book club with It Didn't Start With You, talking about how inherited family trauma shapes who we are and how to end this cycle. And so I want to open the floor really quick. When you think about like inherited trauma, what comes to mind? Because I know for me, it's like when you think of an inheritance, you're getting something like passed on and it's supposed to be a good thing. But when then you throw trauma on it and it's like, this don't sound fun. So I want to open the floor with your all thoughts, and then we'll dialogue about some of the goodies that are in this book this month.
I guess I could start. Inherited trauma. It's kind of the same thought process you just had, Jennifer. But it's kind of like we just automatically get it. Is in a sense we don't really have a choice in it. And that's, I think, what the part about it comes inherited. Because usually when you do inherit something, you're going to get it, it's just happening, but you're excited for it. With this, half the time we don't even know what it is that we have inherited until we get to this different stage in life and start to really look at, okay, what did I just go through as far as childhood or adulthood, and where did it come from? Starting to take those deeper dive looks. But that's, it's the same thought process with that, getting something, but just automatically given to you, but it's trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that point. I think that not really understanding what you're inheriting, but also the factor of you don't know who it came from. And this book really talks about like finding the source, but you don't know which direction to start looking. So it's nice that it had like a step by step how to do that.
Yeah.
Because it's not always easy to figure that out.
You're a mute, sir.
Yeah. So I think of it like, like you inherit features, body features, like my mother would say, I made those eyebrows. I shaped them. You inherit them from me, because I never had to get my eyebrows shaped or arched. And so, but those are things that, that come along with you coming through the portal of life from your parent. And so, but trauma, boy, I'm like, how did I know? And then some stuff that being happened already in your life. I mean, before you be in while you were in your mom's womb and all that stuff, and so that stuff gets to us. I'm like, oh my goodness, that thing there is deep. Yeah, I'm the community person. I am not a therapist, but that hit me.
Yeah. And so that kind of brings me to our first point, but I want to read something that was on the first page of chapter 1, just for those that don't have the book, just because it's just so profound. And it says, a well-documented feature of trauma, one familiar to many, is our inability to articulate what happens to us.
Yes.
During a traumatic incident, our thought processes can become scattered and disorganized in such a way that we no longer recognize the memories as belonging to the original event. There's fragments of memory, dispersed images, body sensations, words are stored in our unconscious and become activated later by anything remotely resembling the original experience. Once we're triggered, it's like an invisible rewind button that has been pressed, causing us to reenact aspects of that original trauma in our day-to-days. Unconsciously, we find ourselves reacting to certain people, certain events, certain situations in an old familiar way that echoes the past. And that was like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm acting this way because of something in the past, or it could be something that happened in the womb that I have no memory of. And so there are studies in the book that share that descendants of trauma can carry physical and emotional symptoms that we didn't directly experience. So I didn't witness it, I don't remember it, but I am totally behaving in a way that is a result of that. So my question to you ladies is, how do we even begin to explain this to people, whether it's a client or it's a community member or a family member?
I think that it's challenging because when you meet a client, you don't want to make it seem like you know everything about them right when they walk in the door. And so bringing up this topic of it didn't start with you, it started with this person I've never even met, can be kind of tricky. So I think really just identifying their language and kind of putting the question in their park to see what they come up with. Because this might be the case, but we can't and we won't know everything about them.
Good point.
I think one of the biggest difficulties, and I've seen in a lot of different realms, is everybody can notice the inherited part, but they can't notice the trauma part. So even to just say to a person, let's say a person who is raising their kids and they're raising their kids exactly how their parents raised them. And they think that, oh, it was good because I turned out all right. I went to school, I did this, I did that. But no, it's still trauma. If we really dig down and talk about it and really piece it out, it is trauma. But some things that are inherited that we see in a day-to-day life, we don't even know it's trauma. It's just now becomes something that we're so used to. And even to just get to that point to them understanding, hey, this is trauma, and even if a person is noticing it is trauma, like Lauren was saying, coming in not trying to be the know-it-all, or even having them having this one thought process and even letting them know, hey, this unfortunately was trauma, it could be kind of hard.
Yeah.
Recognizing that thing it's really something that because a lot of stuff is just really you have to figure it out. You really don't know what's going on with you. And you just trying to find out, what is this? Why am I doing some stuff? Because I have had therapy before, and I understand. So some things were revealed to me, helped me open up why I was behaving certain ways. But I didn't even know it. I didn't know. And then I had to go back. And the question that from the book we read last month was, what happened to you? That had to be asked. And I'm like, well, I don't know what, but I thought that didn't affect me the way it did affect me. But you have to even go past that part. What happened to you? You have to go past that, because now you're dealing with inherited stuff, what happened to you, and then now you. So it's just a deep thing. It's just a lot of steps to even uncovering what's going on with you. So it's a deeper level than what happened to you. So it is like, what did you inherit?
Yeah. And I'm glad you picked that up. I purposely wanted how we've set book club up this year was to set the premises of like, there's all these external factors. There's slave syndrome, there's the police, there's like all these external stuff, and now we're bringing it to you. What happened to you? Okay, you don't know. Okay, let's go back to the beginning. Let's do the family. And as you see, we have more books coming. Like, oh, I can't wait to get to the immature parents one. Like that book I'm getting excited for. Sometimes our parents, they bless their heart, but as adults, you're like, we had to deal with this. And it talks a little bit about this book, and we'll get a little bit towards that, you know, coming to the adults in our lives or our parents, and kind of repairing that when it's just over their head. They can't even process what they did wrong or why you're coming at them for answers. So but I want to transition a little bit to something that was said in the book. And they said that the society doesn't provide many options to help people with inherited trauma. Yes, we have like doctors and psychologists and psychiatrists, and there's medication and therapy, but it only provides relief, but doesn't provide a complete solution. So I wanted to pose this question. What do you think we're missing? We have therapy, we have these doctors, but they're saying it's only just a small relief, that we need a bigger solution. It's not providing the complete solution.
One thing I would mention is how stigma has changed across different generations, because while we might have access to these resources, our parents may not have, our parents' probably didn't either. And so if they never healed their trauma, that's still inherited to us. And so we can resolve that, we can fix that, but hopefully that the cycle can end here, that it doesn't carry on to the next.
Right.
It's so many different components because it's so much help that needs to be in different places. Depending on the person, depending on the situation and what the trauma is that they inherited. But a lot of it is education, I would say. Education for one, these basic things, because you don't, unless you went to like school like we have, or went to like certain career paths, you don't know about basic things like the certain stages of childhood and what a child thinks and experiences during that time. And that information is just not for the public. It's not a pamphlet you could pick up and just have information there. They don't even have those things at the doctor like that. But if you have some basic information and a parent can at least pick up something to say, oh, this is why my child does this, or this is why my child does that. Some of those things could try to, I feel like, change even in that little instance. But also just education and more education out here about simply those things, how trauma is passed down, what some of our trauma is. And it's difficult because you're going to have to bring up some things that people don't want to talk about in order to get that information out there. And you do have to fight against a lot of different things. You, like in Illinois, we're okay with, talking about history, but you do have other states where they're not talking about history at all. They're not allowed to talk about history anymore. So it's difficult.
Right.
So, I agree with that. To piggyback on what you said about history, I think it's important to encourage people to dig into their history, their family history, especially since things are inherited. If things are inherited and it didn't start with our parents, it didn't start with even our grandparents. It could have started with their parents. You know what I'm saying? So we have to if to really fully try to understand where we are and how we became who we are, I think we have to ask the questions to our grandmamas, our aunts, our fathers, our grandfathers, aunties, all them people. Ask those questions, and then also because they're only going to tell what they want you to know. So you're gonna have to dig a little deeper. You might have to do that search for yourself online, or however you do it, about your family. And so this has encouraged. Now, we did a family thing in our family, but it doesn't tell details. Some things I found out about my grandma and my mom, that career paths that they took, and some experiences like from my grandfather, because he was in the Army Reserve. But there's deeper things that have happened in their lives that really affected their whole gene pool. So I think we should encourage one another to investigate and research our history, our family history.
Right. And I'm sorry I'm off camera. My picture was in slow motion. So I was like, let me stop it so maybe it'll refresh. But I like that they said, I don't know if you catch that in the book where it says you got to kind of excavate the family burial grounds for answers. And I was like, wow, that's kind of creepy, but so true. You got to start digging to like find some of this stuff. And some people are so protective of information for whatever reason, whether embarrassment or shame, or, grandmas are infamous for like, that ain't none of your business. That ain't none of your business. Or taking things, like I know family members who parents have taken things to their grave and they are left, and adults in their 60s, 70s, 80s, like, I need this answer. And they took it with them and they never told me, whether it's who their father is or what happened to me when I was 3 and I'm having these flashbacks or whatever. But they also mentioned too, and I think we kind of chit-chatted about this before we recorded, about the book when it says going back to your mother. And we always hear about folks with daddy issues, and like, the fathers are not there and all these daddy issues, but then it's like mom is there. We don't talk about these mommy issues, mother-daughter issues that are so, they're strained, but we don't really talk about it. We don't give moms a bad rap because they scratched and survived and they did everything or this guilt that we sometimes get, where it's like, they brought us into this world, we should be grateful. There's their sense of loyalty that we don't call them out on their crap. Because it's like, but they brought us in this world and they can take us out and all this other stuff. But thinking about that, these mother-daughter relationships, is there anything you guys seen that kind of made you wonder, like, wow, we really need to call out on the stuff that moms and daughters or moms and sons have that is just as traumatic as the daddy issues?
I think I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think it's a couple of different layers, because like with the mom and daughter, like one thing I've often heard was mom, parent their sons and just raise their daughters. They're raising them to have this strong backbone that they had, or this is what you have to do this, this, and this. And I actually have clients dealing with these different things. They have so many more restrictions, so many more rules, so many more standards to live up for as the girl, but as the boy, they didn't have all of these rules and restrictions, and there's excuse after excuse after excuse why it's okay for you to do those things. And it's sad, because that one child does miss out on actually having a parent. And that's the thing too with parenting in general. A lot of parents think that I've done my job of being a parent if I provided, or it was okay for me not to do my job as a parent because I was providing, because I had to do all this providing. But there, you didn't even touch the surface of being a parent, or touch the surface of giving these kids what they need. There's multiple kids that if you ask them, they would be happier homeless on the streets if they had a parent who listened to them, if they had a parent who engaged with them, just was interested in the things that they had interests about. And it's difficult, and oftentimes that is a difficulty of the mom, especially the single mom. I'm out here grinding every day to do what I have to do to put food on the table, keep a head over us, but I also have all of these other things as a parent that I'm supposed to be doing. So that's one part of it, but also these expectations that moms sometimes put on this child, either to get them not to be like them, or to get them to be close resemblance of them because they think that they've done everything right, in a sense. And it's unhealthy. These kids all the time don't grow up knowing who they are.
Yeah,
go ahead.
You can go, Star.
Go ahead. You all are the professionals. I just have an opinion.
No, opinions matter here.
Conversation. That's why we come together every month, because these are good conversations.
I was just gonna jump off of Diamond's point of like the expectation that are put on children, daughters especially, to become this like caregiver, to become a mom. And in the book, he was mentioning like different breaks that you can have with your mom. The first one being merging with feelings, behaviors, and experiences of your parent, and really emphasizing the importance of having the child and having the parent, and not really having overlap of those roles because both are equally as important. And as a child, if you take on the role of a parent, whether that's parenting your parents, parenting your siblings, or yourself,
Right.
you are not only robbing yourself of a childhood, but you're also robbing your parents of the opportunity to be a parent. And so that can be a trauma in both ways. And so I really like how you phrased it, because there is an expectation in some families to become a caregiver when you're a child. And so really finding those patterns early and avoiding them.
I mean, look at the stores. You go in Target, you go down the toy aisle, and it's kitchens and strollers and babies and like tea sets and food. And it's like, what the hell? Like, you're already conditioning me before I'm even born that my role is to do this.
Yeah.
And sometimes we are placed in that role very immaturely, and then no, it's not a doll, but now it's my two brothers. You know, mommy's got to work 2 jobs, so now I got to cook. I got to do all these things, put people to bed, and do everything that the toy aisle has prepared me to do at a very early age.
Yeah, and that's, I experienced that when I was a child, but it wasn't because we stayed in my house with my grandmother and my mom. And so my mother was like, I have this is my, this is my responsibility. You're the daughter. But then I had my grandma. Get that babe, that's your brother. Start this and that. So it was my grandmother who instilled in me that it was my responsibility to be a caregiver to my brothers. I was the only girl. And so when something happened to like my baby brother, I would take it totally to heart. My mother was like, no, he's gonna be okay. I got this. I'm mom. But see, my grandmother was the authority in the house. My mother was the authority, but my grandmother was the authority in the house. And she was the one who, because my mother never, when my grandmother spoke about stuff, my mother never did combat it. She never went against what she said. Her actions would do differently, but in front of my grandmother, when she spoke, things went according to what she said. And so that had a lot of more impact on me until we moved out of my grandmother's house on me, and then my mother being the authority at that time in the house. And so when I got older, all I knew was to care. I had to make sure my kids were well. I had to this and that. I had to, and make sure my brothers were good too. So I took on my own family and my brothers too, because I felt that was my role as a woman, and especially a woman in a Black household. And so I see how those things that's a part of being an inheritance too. You inherit that, and my mother tried to break that mold, but she didn't know she couldn't go against her mom.
Right.
So because she inherited obedience. She inherited, and she took that into her adulthood. So it was and so I started doing things too unspokenly. It was like I began to ask some stuff that I would actually do above and beyond care, because it was an unspoken thing to do, because I just knew it was to do because grandma said this then. So it was it's some things you just do, and it's automatic because it's like you see it and then you heard it once and it's gonna be done. And so you just carry it on. And so now I give my children, my adult children, a way of speaking out. I'm a different parent. I let them say what they need to say. Because I know that you are an individual. You have to learn your own way. I don't want you, because I'm breaking a mold. So I've broken a mold, and I saw the mold that was latched and hinged on to my grandma, and before that, I'm breaking that mold. So Now you are an individual to find out who you are. Now, there are some things like morals that I would like to pass on that are being passed on, but there was some stuff that was in our past that is no good for nobody, not, anybody. And so we're breaking the talk. You have your own thought. Say what you need to say.
Mhm.
And so that's why I only got one grandchild.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I just wanted to piggyback off that really quickly. I have the same setup at home too, as far as hierarchy and rules and stuff like that. So I definitely get that setup. And it gets to a point to where also the role being passed down is this guilt that also gets passed down, because as a person, the older people, their whole role and their whole mentality has been for so long, take care of the family, to when the moment that you choose something for you or what's best for you, and it doesn't necessarily evolve or what they think a family decision should be, then you get all met with all these different things, also all this backlash as who you are, and your place in the family, because you're choosing to do things differently, or your mindset is not just stuck on, hey, my whole life is surrounded about making choices that relates to my family instead of the things that I want to do in life.
Right.
And that gets passed down too. So now I kind of have this hate against you, or this attitude against you, because you're choosing to do things for yourself. You're choosing to make decisions and do the things that you dreamed of. And I'm, one, never made that decision, or two, I don't think that's what you should do, because as a woman, you should be making decisions that help your family. So and then once you grow up and start to make those decisions, or try to learn that it's okay to make those decisions, it's hard, because now I'm crying trying to make this decision, because I feel so bad for thinking about myself, because for so long it's been instilled I have to think about everyone else, and a lot of times that decision is solely put on the woman, that the man never has to make that decision to think about everyone else, except for going to work and maybe pay the bills. But anything else, it was his decision. The women, had to do what the family needed, what supported the family. So that's the toxic part of it too.
Right. Yeah, I love how in the book it says that, if your family history is not always readily available, if you do know it, to start making those links, like linking things together, current behaviors to those things you guys just mentioned. And I love how they broke down like the 4 themes, and like talking about how verbal expression of trauma comes into like this form of core language, like some of the language you guys have been mentioning, and that we have to take initiative to remap our brains so we can practice new skills and kind of emerge these new thoughts and feelings that are more healthy than what our language has shared. And so I'll read from page 146. They talk about it early in the book, but I like page 146 because it gives kind of the definition of what it is. So this language that we're talking about are complaints, descriptors, our core sentence, and then this core trauma. And so our complaint pretty much describes what are our deepest struggles and complaints, kind of what you were alluding to, Diamond, where it's like, this is a complaint. I don't want to have it all be on me because I'm the girl out of the group of boys, and my mom has done the same thing grandma did, and grandma did the same thing, and it's generational. But then to describe it to your parents or the person that's across from you, whether it's a caregiver or if you were raised by your grandma, like this is not right. Like, no. And then that sentence that you tell yourself is, what is your worst fear? Like, I don't want to grow up and be this passive person, because now I've done everything you said, and now the trauma in me makes anybody an authority figure make me compliant, even though I feel like it's not right. And then this trauma, the events in your family that sits behind this core language. And so thinking about that, are there other things portrayed in society that kind of helps with this core language that keeps this trauma inherited? I know, Diamond, you definitely touched on that in the family, but are there other things that we can think of that is this core language that we have that kind of supports this lineage of trauma over time in families?
Yeah, it goes back to what I remember someone saying the last one meeting about how that it must be something wrong with you, or that you don't want to have children, that you don't choose to have children. You know, so where it is where you're a woman, you're supposed to have children, you're supposed to be a mother, you're supposed to be a wife. So I think that can create a sense of trauma on the inside of you, because it makes you feel like you have this whole thing. Well, maybe something's wrong with me, or maybe I'm going against the grain, or maybe I have to deal with, like you said, that I'm failing the family in some sense. Because that's what I gathered from what Diamond was saying, because I don't comply. I'm not complying to this mold that you have put me in, or you want to put me in. So and that language there, period. It just seems like it takes away a woman's right to have a voice and decide. And that could be a whole mind-boggling traumatic experience for a person who feel like they need to be broken out of this mode and have freedom. So, and it becomes, it becomes traumatic in a sense. I don't know if that has it makes sense to say about that language thing.
No, I get that too. And I'm just going to say this last piece, then I'm going to hop out because I do have a client. But also another area is, I say, the career paths. Choosing what career path you want to do. I just remember being in college and some students being told, you may want to choose a different career path because you're a woman or because you're Black. So
or do it because that's your family. Like, we come from a lineage of cops, or we come from a lineage of nurses. You need to be in the medical field. You need to be in the law enforcement field because 20 of your uncles are cops. Now you need to be a cop. And it's like, why? I don't want to.
Or, if you have other backgrounds, certain backgrounds, if you don't do these 2 or 3 different careers, then it doesn't equal out to nothing. You have to be a neuroscience surgeon or a engineer. You can't be a teacher. You can't be a therapist. So even just coming up and trying to figure out what you're going to do with yourself as an adult and just make your own life, it's so difficult because, one, like you said, you have all these expectations of maybe what your parents want you to do, what your family has done for so long, or even just seeing, okay, my mom worked every day like a dog for this long. I don't want to do that. Or I don't even want to go and work a job. I want to go follow a dream. I want to open up a business. And then if you tell your family that, are they going to support you? Are they going to say, oh, that's a good job? Or are they going to have some faith in you in that? Or are you going to have to go through this alone? So, that realm of it too. It's just so much to think about, so much pressure to figure out what job I want to have.
Yeah. Any thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely saw some of that as a vocational counselor. I'd ask my clients, what do you want to do? And how many times I got whatever makes the most money. And you pick up on the fact that probably didn't come from them. It probably came from their parents, their grandparents, or siblings even, that money matters the most. Which is a really good point. I like that you brought that up.
Thank you, Diamond, for joining. I know you're going to hop off. We're going to continue our conversation. So those watching, don't you worry. We're going to continue. But yeah, definitely, Lauren, I definitely agree, especially when there's cultural things too. It's like, yeah, you need to be this doctor because we're from this elite family, you know, or whatever, or oh yeah, Black girls can be in certain science fields, or you know, it gets silly when it's like you're trying to tell people where and what they can do. and and it's supported by the adults that are supposed to be, when you're little, that you're impressionable, and these are the people you trust, and they're not giving sound advice because of trauma.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pay for your school if you want to go to be an artist. Artists are broke and you're not going to make any money. So why would you want to be a starving artist? I'm not going to spend $100,000 for you to go get an art degree.
Yeah. The book also talks about how we ourselves might have these expectations for ourselves. So you are seeking this, I think their example is of love, and how that expectation can stand in the way of your ability to actually receive that love. And so you may feel like your parents should act a certain way, but if they don't, that itself can be traumatic, even though they're living their life for the first time too.
I think of first time parents and the firstborn, like I'm a firstborn, and I feel like, man, we have it hard versus the baby. By the time the baby comes around, the parents really don't care. They're just like, whatever. But those expectations when they're, especially if it's a young mom or a young couple starting off where they're still developmentally growing, they're still learning about themselves. It's like you got to have it perfect to raise this child, but everybody's they're developing throughout your life till you die. It's like there's a developmental stage for 60 and 70-year-olds. So it's like if everybody's constantly growing, you know, sometimes we wonder, is there a fine line? You know, that's why it's so important to ask those questions and get those answers and makes those connections, because I feel like forgiveness could come in play where it's like, okay, I don't have anger towards you, but I know this wasn't right now, and I'm going to go do what I need to do to heal. You can stay in that space if you want, because that's your own journey. But now I know that I'm not like this just because I'm not angry because I'm just angry. I'm angry because of these messages, these core values, these complaints that the book talks about, these worries and fears. I don't want to end up like that. You know, just because you all stayed together, but y'all fought throughout the whole marriage because you didn't believe in divorce. You know, now I have this trauma about my own marriage and my own, you know, what I want in life in a partnership. So it becomes so messy. And I know they talked a little bit in the book on like 115 about when a news story become our family story, and thinking of the things we inherit just out in society, or finding out things through, I think of social media today, where you find out what happened to someone that's your cousin. I remember watching a news thing my dad sent, and it was of a cousin or something that happened to a cousin, and I was just like, oh my God, like this hits home. But you know, I feel a certain way because it's not someone I really knew, but then I knew like this is still a relative that I'm finding out something traumatic happened to them, and how that invokes fear and distrust with certain systems, and how we've had so many people and clients and community members find out things through the media of what happened to loved ones, or the same thing they've heard about over and over and over and over finally hits home. And there's this fear, like, dang, you know, I'm scared to go outside because I don't want to get shot. And now I find out my cousin got killed. It's like, see, this is why I'm scared to go outside. And it's nothing that they directly had happened to them, but it's still inherited from someone else. And so if you guys want to try, like, this is so crazy. It's the inherited piece is still baffling me, and I've been doing this work for so long. So
yeah, one part of the book that really stuck out to me was it's not only the people in your ancestral line, but the people that they interacted with. So say like tragically one of your ancestors was murdered. the murderer is now in your line and can be a part of your trauma, what ultimately led up to you. And so when you're mapping out your legacy and your ancestral line, you do have to think about people outside of the family as well. So it's even bigger than that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And even when you're trying to say that I want to do certain things, and you come up with a thought with this and that and making decisions, you be thinking that you have to now just think about, is this something that I choose to do, or is this something that that I inherited as a choice? When you think about what was it you, Lauren, or was it Diamond before she jumped off about this, what type of love you want to expect, that you expect to receive from someone? And then you're like, well, this expectancy, what did it come from? Is this something that I desired for myself, or is this something that was in me that came from my inheritance, and now I expect for it to happen for me, even though it may not even be a healthy kind of love. And so, but I desire that. And why do I desire that? And so I think back about how when I was in a relationship with my first husband, and it was domestic violence in that relationship. And I did get away from him when my daughter was when she was small. She was like 3 or 4 years old. And so I was divorced. But then, now she's older now. She's 29, and she's better now. But her relationships, she ended up gravitating towards relationships that had, that she encountered domestic violence. And she did exactly what I did. I thought I could fix the situation. And so I said, now reading this thing, it was inherited. Her thought of saying that she could fix a person, that she can, because she did watch for a minute me go through that. Or it might have been because he was abusing me before she was born. So that thing too could have went through as an inheritance. And this book is something that really exposes some stuff and reveals some truths about our part and our family's part in what has been manifested in this time. So I appreciate the reading.
Right. And it's not just it makes me think of just like race and things like that too. It's not just a black and white thing or black and brown thing too. I
Right.
think of like, how we tackled the post-traumatic slave syndrome back in February, and how like it still shocks me when people do like genetic testing, or like they do the family tree and they find out like, oh, there's a white person that finds out they have like African roots in their bloodline, or vice versa, Black African Americans who have white roots. And I've talked to people who've done their lineage and they find out great great grandfather was a slave owner that fell in love with one of their slaves and had children. And it's like there's certain things that come from that, and it's like it mixes all together, and it's not just one race or one person, but all that trauma that came down from as far as 500-600 years ago. And that, how shocking that could be if you have certain beliefs and you found out you have African roots, especially when there's racial issues, and it's like, oh well, I don't like this or like that, and you're stunned because now you find out you have African bloodline, or vice versa, or things that we hate about ourselves that are features that are just, especially I think of African Americans who come in all colors and shapes. So they may hate a certain thing about themselves that they got because culturally they're mixed in with a lot of different things. And so we have to really dig and construct, which the book alludes to on page 128, about constructing like this family tree and finding the core trauma connected to that core sentence that you have about yourself. And so if you guys had experience, whether you did ancestry.com or done a genogram with clients, have you guys had that experience of exploring your own like family tree? And if so, what was that like? Or how would you share someone with someone to kind of do that? To be like, let's explore and find out where you're from and get some answers to some of those things, because I truly believe we're all connected in some capacity. I joke with Star, I think I told her, I was like, yeah, I found out I had Irish, so I celebrate St. Patrick's Day. So I don't look Irish on the outside, but it makes sense when, a couple of people have certain features that look Irish. But, but yeah, have you guys had experience with doing your own or sharing it or having someone do it?
Yeah, I used to do genograms with my students all the time. It's a very fun, like interactive activity for a wide range of ages too. Mostly it was centered on like, what did your parents do for work? What did their parents do for work? And what is your career dream? And so very career focused. But then even just writing down the family members and their names and their relationships was very impactful because a formal genogram has like very specific lines. Like if they argued all the time, the line is like scribbled, or if they died, you X them out. And it's a very emotional process of even just putting the information down on paper. So I imagine with the goal of seeking out the origins of your trauma, that would be even more impactful, even more emotional. So definitely something that I would want to practice myself before I asked a client to do it. Maybe go over some coping skills for what happens if you become emotional or if we uncover something that you didn't expect. But I see it as a great tool.
Yeah, my family member did share like the what you call it, genealogy, I can't say the word, but
Just
chart,
an Instagram. Yep.
that chart. And so, but it was it didn't have details. And so I have spoken with family members who shared a lot of information, and to process it was very emotional. To find out certain things was very emotional. And so I do agree with you, Lauren, to go through it first to see how to deal with the coping skills, because and to know what had some things that truly happened in your background and your heritage with your family members, and you have being a part of that bloodline makes you feel a certain kind of way, you know what I'm saying? And because you feel like, oh, if this happened, because I've had people say, well, you're gonna do that anyway because it's in your blood, your mama, your daddy, or whoever did such and such. And so now you have to fight that thing about becoming what, if it was something terrible in your past, in your bloodline that happened, that you won't become that, or you have not become that already, So it's an emotional thing. And then too, it can be exciting too, because to find out how my mother's career path was so exciting to me. And how she was, I know I like to write, to find out that she had been awarded many awards for her writing capabilities. And I thought that, wow. And, I thought that was exciting to me. And to find out the maiden names and this and that before they became a certain like a, the name that you do know, but they were this name before. That was really exciting to me, that part. So it's an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
It's a roller coaster.
Yeah. There's so many tools out there now to map and do ancestry. So I always tell people, like, yes, it's very exciting, but also to please have that support network, because you never know what's going to pop up. I've seen so many people find siblings and it's like, whoa, wait, my daddy only had me and you. Why is this ancestry saying we 100% siblings? And it's like, whoa, now this is a whole nother trauma wound open. Or you find out certain things like, oh, this happened to my grandmother, or oh, I've actually found who my father is, or I found a long lost cousin, and things like that. It can be very emotional. It can open up more wounds and more questions, but I don't deter people from doing it, but definitely have that support network when things come up, because that's going to bring up some unconscious stuff that they talk about in the book that you may not even know is coming. But I do like that they do in the book about talking about reconnection and just having healing images and practices, rituals and exercises to do. Some of the things they list was like having a photo or candles, writing letters, supportive imagery, creating boundaries. That's a huge one. Healing those relationships, even if it's just with our direct parents, could be so impactful and can be hard at the same time because there's so many barriers that can make that difficult, especially if they're not open or they're old school or they don't even see that they did anything wrong. And so, or just us having this, they talked a little bit about this unconscious loyalty to the trauma and the failures. Like, well, I'm not going to open this can of worms because they did all they could. There's this loyalty that we sometimes have to trauma that we should definitely put our best efforts forward to try to break that. And so we will sabotage, being successful in healing from that trauma. And so, or even in like page 211, they talk about this legacy to unfinished business and like, they do all these things because someone else didn't finish this. So now I feel obligated to do this because this person didn't get a chance to do it. And it may not necessarily be your story to complete or tell. And now you're moving in a traumatic space because of this legacy or this loyalty. So I want to kind of wrap our discussion on those last pieces and any other. I want to open the floor for any other takeaways we may have missed in this book that you would love to share. And piecing this all together. So what do you guys think about that? Those last tidbits that were just like loyalty to failure and legacy to this unfinished business or just reconnecting with ourselves with the things that they say works best.
Yeah, I will say that I'm really happy that there was some resolution to this book because the first half, I'll be completely honest, there were moments where I just had to set down the book and breathe for a few minutes because it is hard work. They ask you to take out a pen and paper and do it as you're reading.
Yes.
And I challenge anyone who hasn't read it or who has to do that. Carefully, be nice to yourself, have a plan for after. But I really appreciate that he kind of covers almost all avenues. Your parents, you're close to your parents, and you can ask them, all the way to you don't know anyone in your family. You don't know where the trauma came from. You didn't locate the origin. What happens then? And so I like that there was multiple different avenues to get to healing. That's one thing that I really appreciate about the book, and that it kind of puts the power back into the present, back into your hands, because yes, you may not have asked for all of this, but you can still move forward.
Amen.
Yeah, I like that.
So, I got kind of really stuck and not stuck, but I got a lot of my impactful thoughts from this book from chapter 4. And when it said the core language approach, and it says that unconscious insists, repeats, and practically breaks down the door to be heard. And so and that's all about like the body has everything on the inside of it to heal itself. The same thing with this. Our unconsciousness, our subconscious, it fights for healing. So it fights to find out a resolution or a solution to the situation that's the turmoil that's on the inside of you. This thing here, really, that one statement right there made me understand that in our unconsciousness, this body is gonna work to push things to the front, to be resolved, to be dealt with, and so that we can be whole, so we can think in a positive way, or so we can be healthy mentally. And then it says, when fragments of the past trauma play out inside us, these fragments leave behind clues in the form of emotionally charged words and sentences that often lead to us back to unresolved trauma. And so that means it goes back, it sends you back so that you can go to that, so you can deal with it. Let's deal with that so you can, on this side, your life can be whole and be different. I love it.
Yes. Yeah, it's such a beautiful book. As all of our books we've been tackling, it tackles those hard conversations. It gives good solutions and where to start. And the Competency Center is always here to help. If you need someone to kind of guide you through this is the best place to start. And yeah, it's just I'm loving that we're able to have people that are bringing this to light. And if they can't read it, that we're coming together to bring it to light. And so that's what book club is so special to me and to the center. And so any last thoughts, ladies, that you want to share? Did we miss anything with this book that your burning desire needs to share?
I'm, you know what, I'm so of all these books, I'm to the point, not depleted, but emotionally like because it's work. Like Lauren said, I've been working with these books. And so I love the books, and they're doing some great things for me. And I'm putting the things into practice, but it is depleting.
Yeah.
And in a good way, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because it is work.
Yeah, it's definitely work. And I mean, like I said, you don't have to be a clinician to understand this stuff. It's stuff that's happening to all of us, no matter the career path we've taken. It's harder when we're aware. And I think we have to balance the self-care piece where it's like, okay, I need to disconnect from social media. I need to not talk to my family. Someone told me, they was like, yeah, if it's really an emergency, they know who else to call besides you. So if you decide not to answer, they're going to go to the next sibling. They're going to go to the cousin. They're going to go to the kid. They're going to find a way to get the information. You don't have to answer the phone today if you don't need to. And so being able to kind of disconnect when you've had enough, and baby steps is always key too. You don't have to resolve something that's been 500 years in the making, since we've been able to record mankind, there's been traumatic stuff happening across thousands of years, so we don't have to take it all today. We can take it in small bites and choose. So
yeah, that's me from the community talk. Really.
So all right, well, thank you ladies so much. It's always a pleasure. Our next book for August will tackle for The Deepest Well, which is healing the long-term effects of childhood trauma and adversity by I don't know the author. Let me see.
Nadine Burke Harris.
Is that right?
Nadine Burke Harris.
Yes, if that's what's on the book, then yes. I don't have my book with me. But yes, we will be tackling that. I'm gonna take my picture off of the freeze because I've been freezing all day today. So this is our book for next month. Again, those that are listening, please join us. If not, listen later. And if not, that's okay, because we're going to continue to rock and roll next month. Everyone should be back by August so we can tackle these books. But again, self-care after, because this has definitely been a long hour of just heavy stuff. So definitely take care of yourself if you need to after this. And yeah, I will see you ladies next month.
See you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.